What started as a routine late-night interview turned into television chaos when Johnny Depp confronted Jimmy Kimmel about his past comments regarding the actor's legal battles, leading to an explosive on-air meltdown that ended with security escorting the Hollywood legend off the set. The studio lights blazed down on stage 7 as Jimmy Kimmel adjusted his tie, flashing that familiar smirk to the live audience. Tonight's guest was supposed to be a ratings goldmine, Johnny Depp, making his first major talk show appearance since his highly publicized legal victories. The audience buzzed with anticipation, phones already recording despite the no-filming policy. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Johnny Depp," Kimmel announced with theatrical enthusiasm. The crowd erupted as Depp strode onto the stage, his trademark rings catching the studio lights. He waved to the audience before settling into the guest chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp, a detail that should have warned Kimmel of what was coming. The interview began smoothly enough. Kimmel cracked jokes about Depp's latest film project, and the actor responded with his characteristic wit and charm. The audience laughed at all the right moments, and for the first 10 minutes, everything seemed perfectly scripted. But beneath the surface, tension was building like a storm gathering strength. "So, Johnny," Kimmel said, leaning forward with that calculated late-night host intimacy, "we haven't seen you on the talk show circuit much lately. You've been busy with other things." The pause was deliberate, loaded with implication. The audience sensed the shift, their laughter fading to an uncomfortable murmur. Depp's smile remained fixed, but his fingers drummed once against his knee, a barely perceptible tell. "Well, Jimmy, I've been focusing on my work, my music, spending time with my family. You know, the things that actually matter." Right, Kimmel nodded, but there was something predatory in his expression now. "Speaking of things that matter, I have to ask, and I know this might be uncomfortable, but during all that legal drama, some pretty wild stuff came out. I mean, we all saw those text messages, heard those recordings." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Depp's publicist, sitting in the green room, grabbed her phone, sensing disaster approaching. The show's producers exchanged worried glances from their positions behind the cameras. "Jimmy," Depp said quietly, his voice carrying a warning edge that anyone who knew him would recognize, "I thought we were here to talk about my new film." But Kimmel couldn't read the room, or perhaps he simply didn't care. He'd smelled blood in the water and was circling like a shark. "Come on, Johnny. The audience wants to know. How do you bounce back from something like that? I mean, some of those things you said in private, pretty shocking stuff for America's favorite pirate." The audience was dead silent now, feeling the electricity in the air. Depp's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and when he spoke, his voice had dropped to that dangerous whisper that had made him famous in countless films. "You know what's shocking, Jimmy?" Depp leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Kimmel's face. "What's shocking is sitting here listening to someone who spent months making jokes about my personal hell on this very stage. Someone who turned my pain into punchlines for cheap laughs while I was fighting for my life and my reputation." Kimmel's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place, but there was sweat beading on his forehead now. "Hey, that's what we do here. We make jokes about the news. It's comedy, Johnny. Don't take it so personally." "Don't take it personally?" Depp's voice rose slightly, and the audience could feel the storm about to break. "You called me a wife-beater on national television. You made jokes about my addiction struggles while I was in recovery. You turned my lowest moments into material for your monologue, and now you want to sit here and act like we're old friends having a chat." The cameras kept rolling, capturing every micro-expression, every beat of sweat, every shift in body language. This was no longer an interview. It was a reckoning, broadcast live to millions of viewers who were witnessing something unprecedented. In late-night television, Kimmel tried to regain control, his media training kicking in. "Look, Johnny, I understand you're upset, but—" "Upset?" Depp cut him off, his voice now carrying the full weight of years of suppressed anger. "Jimmy, you have no idea what upset looks like. You sat in this chair night after night while I was going through the worst period of my life, and you turned it into entertainment. You fed my reputation to your audience like meat to lions, and now you want to shake hands and pretend it never happened?" The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Camera operators zoomed in, capturing the raw emotion on Depp's face, the nervous energy radiating from Kimmel. This was television gold, and everyone in the building knew it, including the executives who were probably having heart attacks in their offices upstairs. But this was only the beginning. Kimmel's face had gone pale, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. Years of controlling late-night television had made him arrogant, convinced he could talk his way out of any situation. He forced a laugh that sounded hollow in the dead air of the studio. Johnny, come on. You're being a little dramatic here, don't you think? This is television. We make jokes about everyone. Celebrities, politicians, your mom if she's in the news. It's not personal. It's just what we do." The casual dismissal was like gasoline on a fire. Depp's hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his knuckles white with tension. "Not personal? Jimmy, you called my ex-wife a saint while calling me a monster. You made jokes about my sobriety while I was fighting to stay clean. You turned my children's pain into material for your opening monologue." The audience was completely silent now, some covering their mouths in shock, others reaching for their phones despite the no-recording policy. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was a public execution, and they were witnessing it live. Kimmel's producer was frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, making cutting motions across his throat, but Kimmel was too deep in his own ego to see the signals. "Look, if you can't handle a few jokes, maybe you shouldn't be in this business. Everyone gets roasted. It's part of being famous." "Everyone gets roasted." Depp's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper again. "Tell me, Jimmy, when your personal life fell apart, when you went through your divorce, did I make jokes about it? When you struggled with your weight, when you had your own problems, did I turn that into entertainment?" The question hung in the air like a sword. Kimmel's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He was used to controlling the narrative, having the last word, but now he was trapped in his own studio with nowhere to hide. "That's different," Kimmel finally managed, his voice cracking slightly. You're Johnny Depp. You're a movie star. You signed up for this level of scrutiny. I signed up to be an actor, not a punching bag for your insecurities." Depp stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. The audience gasped collectively. "You know what the real joke is, Jimmy? You think you're some kind of moral authority, sitting behind this desk, judging everyone else's lives. But you're just a bully with a microphone." Kimmel's face flushed red, his carefully maintained composure finally cracking. "Hey, wait just a minute. You don't get to come on my show and—" "Your show?" Depp's laugh was bitter, cutting. "This isn't your show, Jimmy. This is a freak show, and you're the ringmaster. You invite people here to humiliate them, to tear them down for your audience's amusement. But tonight, the tables have turned." The security guards near the stage shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the meltdown. In television control rooms across the country, executives were probably scrambling, trying to decide whether to cut the feed or let it play out. "You want to know what's really funny?" Depp continued, his voice gaining strength. "For months, you sat here night after night making jokes about my legal battles, my addiction, my personal relationships. You turned my hell into your punchlines. But you know what you never talked about? The truth. You never mentioned the evidence that vindicated me. You never apologized when the facts came out. You just moved on to the next target." Kimmel was sweating profusely now, his shirt sticking to his back. "Johnny, I think you're overreacting here. Maybe we should take a commercial break. No. Depp's voice cut through the studio like a blade. We're not taking a break. We're going to finish this conversation. You wanted to talk about my private life, my personal struggles, my darkest moments. Well, here I am. Let's talk about yours. The threat hung in the air like a loaded gun. Everyone in the studio could feel the shift, the moment when the hunted became the hunter. Kimmel's eyes darted around the studio looking for an escape route, but there was nowhere to run. What do you want from me? Kimmel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Depp smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I want you to understand what it feels like to be the punchline, Jimmy. I want you to know what it's like when someone takes your pain and turns it into entertainment. But most of all, I want you to remember this moment every time you think about making jokes at someone else's expense. The studio fell silent again, the weight of Depp's words settling over everyone like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a reckoning, and everyone knew it. Kimmel's hands were shaking now as he reached for his coffee mug, a desperate attempt to appear casual, but his voice betrayed him when he spoke. Johnny, I think maybe we should— Should what? Depp interrupted, taking a step closer to the desk. Should pretend this conversation never happened? Should go back to your scripted questions about my new movie? Should let you off the hook the same way you never let me off yours? The audience was transfixed, some leaning forward in their seats, others covering their faces with their hands. They'd come expecting comedy and celebrity banter, but instead they were witnessing the complete destruction of a late-night television host's reputation in real time. You know what the worst part is, Jimmy? Depp's voice was steady now, controlled, like a surgeon wielding a scalpel. It's not even that you made the jokes. It's that you never bothered to learn the truth. You never did your homework. You just repeated whatever narrative got you the biggest laughs, regardless of whether it was destroying someone's life. Kimmel tried to regain some composure, straightening his tie with trembling fingers. Look, Johnny, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but— Hurt my feelings? Depp's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Jimmy, you didn't hurt my feelings. You contributed to a campaign of character assassination that nearly destroyed my career, my relationships with my children, my ability to trust anyone in this industry. You weren't just making jokes. You were participating in a public lynching. The words hit the studio like a physical blow. Camera operators zoomed in tighter, capturing every bead of sweat on Kimmel's forehead, every muscle tensed in Depp's jaw. The show's producers were frantically trying to signal for a commercial break, but Kimmel couldn't see past his own panic. That's not fair, Kimmel stammered, his voice cracking. I was just doing my job. I was commenting on what was in the news. Your job? Depp's voice rose again, echoing through the studio. Your job is to entertain people, not to destroy them. Your job is to bring joy, not to spread poison. But you turned your platform into a weapon, and you aimed it at me night after night while I was down. The audience was completely silent now, afraid to even breathe. Some had tears in their eyes, feeling the raw emotion radiating from the stage. This wasn't television anymore. This was real life, unfiltered and unscripted. Kimmel's producer finally managed to catch his eye, making frantic gestures toward the exit. But Kimmel was trapped, caught between his own ego and the crushing weight of Depp's accusations. I never meant for it to go that far. But it did go that far, didn't it? Depp pressed, his voice relentless. It went so far that my own daughter started believing the lies. It went so far that directors wouldn't hire me. It went so far that I had to fight for my life in a courtroom while you sat here making jokes about my pain. The studio lights seemed to dim as the weight of the moment settled over everyone. This wasn't just about jokes or hurt feelings anymore. This was about accountability, about the real-world consequences of treating people's lives like entertainment. What do you want me to do? Kimmel asked, his voice barely audible. Do you want me to apologize? Do you want me to grovel? What's it going to take? Depp stared at him for a long moment, his eyes cold as winter. I want you to understand that your words have consequences. I want you to realize that behind every punchline is a human being, with feelings, with family, with a life that can be destroyed by your careless comments. The audience held its breath, waiting for Kimmel's response. But instead of humility, instead of genuine remorse, something else flickered across the host's face. Defiance. You know what? Kimmel said, his voice suddenly stronger, fueled by desperation and wounded pride. Maybe you deserved it. Maybe if you hadn't put yourself in those situations, if you hadn't made those choices, there wouldn't have been anything to joke about. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The audience gasped audibly, several people standing up from their seats. Even the camera operators seemed to flinch at the callousness of the statement. Depp's face went deadly calm, the kind of stillness that precedes a storm. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute finality. And there it is, the real Jimmy Kimmel. Not the comedian, not the entertainer, but the man who thinks other people's pain is justified if it serves his purposes. He turned toward the audience, his movements deliberate and controlled. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just witnessed something remarkable. You've seen a man reveal his true character on live television. Remember this moment, because this is who he really is when the cameras are rolling and he thinks he's safe behind his desk. Kimmel's face had gone completely white, the full impact of his words finally hitting him. Johnny, wait, I didn't mean… But Depp was already walking toward the exit, his dignity intact despite everything that had transpired. The studio was in chaos now, with producers scrambling and security guards moving into position. Johnny, please! Kimmel called out desperately, half standing from his chair. Don't do this! We can work this out! But Depp didn't turn around. He paused at the edge of the stage, addressing the audience one final time without looking back at his tormentor. To everyone watching at home, remember what you've seen here tonight. Remember that behind every celebrity scandal, every public downfall, every late-night punchline, there's a real person with real feelings. And remember that some people in this industry will destroy lives for ratings. The audience erupted into spontaneous applause, many standing from their seats. It wasn't the polite, cued applause of a typical talk show. This was genuine emotional support for a man who had just laid his soul bare on national television. Kimmel's face crumpled as he realized he was losing his own audience. Security! He shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Get him out of here! 2 large security guards moved toward Depp, but he held up a hand, stopping them in their tracks. I'm leaving on my own terms, he said calmly, just like I did everything else. As Depp walked up the aisle toward the exit, audience members reached out to touch his arm, to offer words of support. Some were crying, others were cheering. The cameras followed his every step, capturing the raw emotion on faces throughout. The crowd! This is my show! Kimmel screamed from behind his desk, his composure completely shattered. You can't just walk out on me! I'm Jimmy Kimmel! Depp paused at the studio door and finally turned back, his eyes finding Kimmel's across the chaos of the studio floor. And I'm Johnny Depp, he said simply. The difference is, people will remember this night for all the right reasons when it comes to me, and all the wrong reasons when it comes to you. With that, he pushed through the exit doors and disappeared into the night, leaving behind a studio in complete pandemonium. Kimmel stood behind his desk, his shirt soaked with sweat, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The audience was still on their feet, but now they were booing, their anger palpable. Someone shouted, "Shame on you!" from the back of the studio, and others picked up the chant. Cut to commercial! Kimmel screamed at his producers. Cut to commercial now! But it was too late. The damage was done, broadcast live to millions of viewers who had just witnessed the complete destruction of a late-night television institution. Social media was already exploding with clips of the confrontation, with hashtags supporting Depp trending worldwide within minutes. The show never returned from that commercial break. Instead, viewers were treated to an endless loop of advertisements, while network executives held emergency meetings and lawyers prepared damage control statements. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift and merciless. Sponsors pulled their advertising, A-list celebrities canceled their appearances, and the show's ratings plummeted to historic lows. Kimmel issued multiple public apologies, each one more desperate than the last, but the damage to his reputation was irreversible. Meanwhile, Depp's career experienced a renaissance. Directors who had previously avoided him due to the negative publicity now lined up to work with him. His new film, the one he had originally come to promote, became one of the year's biggest hits. More importantly, he had reclaimed his narrative and his dignity. The confrontation became a defining moment in entertainment history, studied in media ethics classes and cited whenever discussions arose about the responsibility of public figures to treat each other with basic human decency. It served as a stark reminder that behind every celebrity scandal is a real person whose life can be destroyed by careless words and thoughtless cruelty. The incident sparked widespread discussion about the culture of late-night television, the ethics of comedy at others' expense, and the real-world consequences of turning people's pain into entertainment. Many hosts across the industry quietly changed their approach to celebrity gossip and personal attacks, unwilling to risk facing their own reckoning. As for Kimmel, he never fully recovered from that night. His show limped along for several more months before ultimately being canceled, a casualty of his own cruelty and arrogance. He retreated from public life, his reputation forever tarnished by the moment he revealed his true character to the world. The confrontation highlighted the importance of respect and professionalism in the entertainment industry, serving as a powerful reminder that fame and success don't give anyone the right to destroy another person's life for profit or entertainment. In the end, justice was served not in a courtroom, but on a soundstage, witnessed by millions who finally saw the truth about both men. Depp had walked into that studio as a target, but he left as a victor, having reclaimed not just his reputation, but his soul.